Right then, big game coming up tomorrow. Manchester United taking on Tottenham Hotspur in the Premier League. Another opportunity for United to really start to seal that, not just top four space now, because I think that United are very much in the driving seat for the top four, but for us to actually make sure we go on and just seal second place. Because I think being in second for so long this season, I think if you ended up dropping out of that and finishing fourth, regardless of whatever happens in the Cups, it'd still feel a bit of a disappointment. Not that second place is a trophy, but it does represent consecutive top four finishes for the first time since Sir Alex Ferguson has retired, which is tangible progress. Yes, would love to see some sort of trophy added to that as well, but we take what we take and hope that the Glazers are going to actually allow us to spend some cash over the summer and improve this football team. Tottenham are a strange prospect under Jose Mourinho. Very much relying on individual brilliance, which is quite hilarious. Harry Kane's on absolute fire. You got to stop Harry Kane. You stop Harry Kane, you do have half a chance. In their last 10 league games between the two sides, though, it's 4 for United, 4 for Tottenham, and 2 have been a draw. So someone needs to tip the balance this time, I think. They're currently 6th. They are 3 points behind West Ham, who are in a Champions League position. And they've got 4 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss in their last 6 Premier League games. Coming into this game, I would expect Mourinho to go with probably the 4-2-3-1. And I would think Aurier, Sanchez, Alderweireld, Reguilon would probably be the back 4. And I think Ndombele, Højbjerg as the 2 sort of deeper midfielders. And I would think Bale, Lucas, Son, if fit, and Harry Kane as the lone striker. In the last 2 games, though, he has opted for a 4-4-2, which we've seen Vinicius brought into it, and also Lo Celso and Lucas have been brought into that as well for the expense of Son, Bale, and Lucas. So there could be a bit of a mix-up, but I do expect he'll probably go with the 4-2-3-1. Now, Son will likely come in again because he's supposedly regained fitness after the injury he picked up against Arsenal. He'll probably replace Lo Celso if he does opt for that formation. And I do think he will be going back to the 4-2-3-1, which means that Vinicius will probably make way for Bale or potentially even Lamela or maybe even Sissoko if he wants to go a little bit more defensive. And to be honest, it's all on the table with Mourinho at the moment. Bale's fallen out of favour with Mourinho, because it's Mourinho and it's Bale. His lack of work rate defensively does mean that someone like Sissoko coming in, or even Lamela, even though it doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, could happen, because we know what Jose is like when he's falling out with a player and he's not having him. He's just not having him. Matt Doherty and Ben Davies are probably the only other 2 that are currently on the injury list, so I wouldn't expect either of those 2 to feature. Right, Starman, let's have a look. It's Harry Kane. The guy's got 32 goal involvements in 28 league games this season, and even though my personal opinion is I don't think he would suit Manchester United, he's having a great season, and you can still have an excellent season, be a fantastic player, and just not be the right stuff for United. We've seen that countless times over the years where someone looks amazing, but it doesn't work for them at United, or they can't replicate that form at United, and I think that would be the case with Kane. I could be wrong. I just don't think... One, I don't think it's realistic to think that he would be coming at Manchester United, and 2, I just don't think it would work. I think he has to be the big fish in a small pond. I don't know if he could be a fish in a massive pond. But yeah, 19 goals, 13 assists, showing a little bit more of that playmaking ability, as well as a good level of goal scoring. And Son and Kane combined have now got 31 goals and 22 assists between them for Tottenham just in the league. But that tells me one thing. You keep them quiet, you keep Tottenham quiet, you probably go on and win that game. Højbjerg and Ndombele in midfield, if you look at the rest of their 11, they're a bit like chalk and cheese. Højbjerg being a little bit more workmanlike, Ndombele being a little bit more adventurous, likes to take risks, he's got tricks, he's got skills, and he does give you an opportunity to nick it off him. United could possibly target him with a press, maybe try and get it off him, but if you give him space, you give him time, or if he beats that press, then he is dangerous because he is a good footballer. Spurs occasionally leave spaces in between the midfield and in between the defence, and the distances can be quite big, and that does give teams a lot of opportunity in between the lines, which is where Bruno Fernandes could really be key if United can get the ball to him. And we'll talk about this in a little bit when I talk about my United 11, because that's one of the things that I think would be key in this game. And I'm torn on what I would do, in all honesty, for a couple of reasons. And again, we will get into those. It's not as simple as just pick an 11. I think there has to be some consideration into why and who that you pick with this. Højbjerg is very important for Tottenham, both in possession and out. He completed 2,196 passes this season, which is the third most for any individual player, and it's first out of all midfielders as well, amounting 82 tackles completed this season, which is more than any other player in the league. He's absolutely vital, and he's been a very good player for Tottenham this season. United's biggest area of threat comes in Tottenham's weakest area of defence, which is their right-hand side, our left-hand side. Aurier, Sanchez tend to be on that side. Obviously, Aurier's on that side. Sanchez tends to be on that side. Our tendency is to attack down the left-hand side. Aurier can be exploited both 2v1 and 1v1. He's not good enough. And he has a tendency for a bit of a lapse in concentration, especially when 1v1 defending. I would identify him as the weak link, and certainly what United should be looking to try and target. And again, we'll get onto more of that when we do my 11. Tottenham are very narrow and compact as a back four, is what you would expect with a Jose Mourinho team, which means that there should be space in the wide areas, which is why you would like to see KANE featuring this one, because Shaw's crossing of late has been pretty good from open play. That's something that United could certainly take advantage of. Lucas and Son's speed on the counter-attack should be an area of concern because they're absolutely lethal. And as we saw with the game at Old Trafford, you give them an inch and you're going to get turned over. This is a big game for United's mentality as well, to go back and hurt a team that's absolutely tatered us once already this season. Yes, it was with 10 men, but it still happened. And some of the goals that we conceded, doesn't matter whether there was 10 men on the pitch, they were shocking and they need to be fixed. If they can isolate either Maguire or Lindelof high up the pitch, it's over. It's absolutely over. I would love to have seen either Tuanzebe or Bailly feature in this. I'm not sure either of them will. I do think it would be Maguire, Lindelof. They get isolated in the inside channels, it's not going to go well. KANE usually vacates this space. When there's a counter-attack on, he usually gets drawn to the ball. And because he has got a decent range of passing and decent vision, it'll be him looking to unleash Bale, Son, Lucas, someone like that with pace to go and finish it off. That's why he's got so many assists. That's what he does the best. And that's what I was sort of talking about when we was on a podcast with Rio the other day. I don't see KANE leading a line in a counter-attack. Some Spurs fans sent me like 3 of his goals that he's done when he's done that. Okay, that's 3, but all of the other instances are KANE gets drawn towards the ball and he's the guy that makes the playmaking. He's the one that usually gets involved in a counter-attack by being on the ball rather than being the runner. The runners are Son, Lucas, Bale. That's usually what happens. Spurs have also completed the 4th most through balls in the final third, whilst averaging less possession and passes completed than all the 3 teams that are above them in the list, which is Liverpool, City and Leicester. So it's clear how they look to hurt teams defensively. They are trying to play on the counter. They're trying to play extremely direct through their quick and pacey players, and it could be a case of who blinks first if we go down a similar sort of route. Stats-wise, Tottenham are 14th in the league for defensive pressures in the attacking third, which means that they're not really aggressively high pressing. They do prefer to sit back and soak up the pressure and then try and hit you on a little bit of a counter, especially against offensive-minded opposition. They are 19th, which is obviously second to last when it comes to crosses attempted. They don't look to build up pressure in the final third and whip balls in, even though I actually think that would be very useful. So for someone like Harry Kane, they don't really utilise that sort of width. They do look to attack through central areas with wide forwards making runs centrally and into the centre channels, blindside runs and things like that. You don't really see them whipping in any sort of crosses. Literally 19th in the league. Harry Kane drops deep and becomes a bit of a playmaker, and he's arguably one of their best passers. They're averaging 50% possession per game, which is less than Brighton, Leicester, Southampton, Leeds. Again, another good indication of how they're going to want to play this. Expect United to probably end up with a lot of possession in this game, and that worries me. I think it plays right into Spurs' hands, right into Jose Mourinho's hands, right into giving United the rope to hang ourselves with, essentially, because I'm looking at Maguire and Lindelof and thinking, Son and Lucas in behind, absolute nightmare for us. As we said, Harry Kane, the amount of goals and assists that he's got so far this season's absolute disgusting. And they're not very progressive in possession. When they're not playing counter-attacking, there's not a lot of flow to their passes. It can rely a lot on individual players to pull something out of their arse. Jesus Christ, am I previewing them or us? And there's the passing range that they've got is more akin to Fulham and Brighton than any of the top teams. So it's an interesting one that we're going to be coming up against. United starting 11 that I would go for this, and I'll give you my 11 that I'm going for, and then I'll give you the probable possible changes. Hendo in net. Wan-Bissaka, Lindelof, Maguire and Shaw making out the back four. McTominay, Fred. And going back to the defence, Wan-Bissaka in this game could be absolutely vital on the counter. I would almost have him just not even attempting to go forward with the ball whatsoever. Literally have him side on and ready to be a recovery defender for if the line gets broken. McTominay and Fred. Bruno in the 10. Greenwood on the right. Rashford on the left. Cavani down the centre. Now, possible changes, possible improvements or just options in this team. I think Paul Pogba should play. I don't know where Paul Pogba should play. I think Ollie doesn't have the nerve or the trust of the team, probably more importantly, to play Pogba over Fred in this team and instead just go with Matic or McTominay. I think I probably would. The other thing he might do is he might play Pogba in that wide left position, move Rashford over to the right-hand side. He might do that. That would get his match winners into the team, but I think it nullifies Marcus Rashford if you do that. I don't necessarily think you get the best out of Paul Pogba for doing that, but it kind of is the best of both worlds. I think Cavani has to play for the ability of Shaw to try and find him with a header. And that's how we're going to get, how do United actually beat them? How are United going to break this team down? So one of the ways we can exploit them, as we've said, down that right-hand side, the tandem of that defence, Aurier and Sanchez, it's just a weakness. And it's just an obvious weakness. Aurier in particular can be very erratic and rash with his 1v1 defending. Rashford, Shaw link up and overlaps down that side could cause them all sorts of chaos. And I think with how narrow that they go, I do think there's a very real opportunity for United to be having Marcus dribble in, maybe till he hits the roadblock that he's inevitably going to hit, playing the ball back out to Shaw, who's managed to maintain a little bit of space, touch it out of his feet, whip across in for Cavani, who's hopefully on the move. And even if you manage to get a save or a block from there, have Bruno arrive in late and try and stick the ball in the back of the net from there, that would work for me. With Aurier individually, Rashford, run at him, isolate him. He does make fouls. He could be someone that's drawn into making a tackle inside the box, which, because of how narrow they are, definitely could result in a penalty with the speed that Marcus dribbles at. And I think another area that United can exploit is just in between the lines. The gap that they leave between the defence and the midfield is basically Bruno Fernandes territory. If Pogba comes in on the left-hand side, him and Bruno are going to absolutely love that sort of half space in between the two lines there. They'll revel in it. I think there'll be tons of it. With Højbjerg and Ndombele, they kind of push up. They don't get attacking, but they push up and they don't sit right. They don't collapse basically on top of the defence. And I think there's opportunities there. And I think in transition, I think after winning back possession, Spurs positioning isn't what you would call a low block, even if they do like to cede possession to teams. They do creep up the pitch a little bit, and I do think that they can be got at on the transition. And I think if you hit them fast and don't allow them back into shape, you use the pace that United have got. It's similar to what they've got. They're going to try and hit us with the same sort of thing. If you allow us to recover our shape, we're fine. If you can get at Lindelof and Maguire early, you're going to cause us all sorts of problems. We've seen that. We need to be sharp, and this is why I go back to the Fred and McTominay midfield. This is why I have a fundamental problem with this. I don't believe either player has got the quality. And this is the problem with looking at the stats. I saw some stats this week that Fred's got some unbelievable stats when it comes to everything a United player needs through midfield. The problem is he's ranking first as United midfielders because Matic has barely played, Pogba's been injured for however, McTominay doesn't start as often, Bruno's obviously further up the pitch and not involved in build-up anywhere near as much. So conversely, Fred's stats in the squad look fantastic, but in reality, I think anybody who's watched him understands that there's some serious limitations to Fred as a footballer. I think he can do a fantastic job off the ball. I think on the ball, him and McTominay still leave a hell of a lot to be desired and still can be improved upon and still don't really have that quality that you need in possession, that incisive back to front pass into the striker's feet or into space in behind the defence that turns them around that someone like Cavani could get onto. Both of them play very, very safe balls. You'll see both of them passing to the fullback, passing to each other, passing back to the defence, maybe passing to Bruno as he comes and gets into a pocket, but you don't see any of them with that Michael Carrick style pass where it's come into midfield, they've turned and they've absolutely blasted it and fizzed it into the final third before a defence is set or before it's dropped all the way back into its box, still giving you some time. One of the issues with how slow Manchester United look in build-up is because there's too many safe passes, and they're safe because the lads don't trust their own ability. And they're safe because the lads either don't have that ability or they're nervous about that they can't make that pass. I'd love to see McTominay trying it once a game to see if he can add that to his locker, even just once a game. Even if he messes it up, it's only once. We can have that. But I just don't see him having that bravery to try and push that pass through. But like I said, if you nullify Kane and Son, and that's obviously easier said than done, I think you can do it. And that's why I would try and say, if Son's going to go line up on the left-hand side, Wan-Bissaka could do a very decent job on him. You've got to make sure, though, that it is Maguire that takes ownership of playing on Kane, because I think them two can have a good tussle, and I actually fancy Maguire to win most of the aerial battles with that one. I do not want him to go and line up on Lindelof because we've seen it before. Lindelof will get turned over and struggle 1v1 in the air. The direct nature of how Tottenham play and how Harry Kane plays is the absolute kryptonite for Lindelof. He's great in the channel when it's on the floor and when it's been turned around into those little pockets. But the direct English number 9 sort of old school style, he struggles with a lot. So that's what I'm thinking. Couple of options there in the 11. I'm not really consolidated with it myself because I think Pogba needs to play in there somehow. I'm just not sure how. I think Ollie will lean towards a safer option of McTominay and Fred, and maybe that's an issue. Maybe some of you see that as an issue, and I'd probably likely to agree with you on that. But that's what I reckon, and that's how I think United can beat Spurs. Let us know in the comments. Did you enjoy that? Did you learn anything? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Give me your 11. Give me your score predictions. And I will see you. Do you know what? Actually, let's go. First goal scorer, the minute of the first goal, and your score prediction. If you get it right, I'll send you some Paddock merch. How's that sound? Sound like a winner? Get your comments in, and I'll see you in the next one. Laters.